Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 2012 BMW M5. I just want to clarify a couple of things before we start this review. I'm doing the review of this car because the newest M5 is coming to Fortune Island expansion. So yeah, I wanted to review a couple of the previous generations before that, so that's why I'm doing this one, and I did the 2009 BMW M5 in the previous episode. And secondly, we're going to have to do this review a little bit differently, because a couple of bugs are preventing me from being able to look inside at the engine bay or in the boot or even get in the car, because normally how I would get rid of the first bug is by getting in and out of the car, as the bug is where it sets the camera at a low level in the Forza Vista mode. And usually to get around that, you're able to get into the car and then get out again, and it will reset it to a good height so you can actually look into the engine bay, etc. But for whatever reason, it's not let me getting into the car. I've found this with another vehicle. I think the Caterham doesn't let me do it either. So yeah, unfortunately I can't look at the vehicle or anything because it's at a stupidly low level, and at that level you can't look at the boot or even at the engine. So yeah, I do apologise for that. It's a bug that's been around for a while, and for whatever reason it's not been fixed. But nonetheless, this car was produced between 2011 and 2016, and it's taller, longer and wider than the previous M5, which unfortunately means it's 111 pounds heavier, despite using carbon fibre, so it weighs 4,123 pounds. Now granted, this does have more power and more torque than that previous M5, as it has a 4.4 litre twin turbocharged V8 engine, producing 552 horsepower and 501 pounds-feet of torque. So yeah, it's a smaller engine, as the previous M5 had a 5 litre V10, but with those turbochargers on it, the reduction in cylinders and reduction in cubic capacity does nonetheless mean it has 52 extra horsepower and 118 extra pounds-feet of torque. But because of that extra weight, it's not quite as quick. They are pretty much the same, but this is ever so slightly slower. And yeah, the top speed has been limited in real life to 190 mile an hour, though it will do 202 on this game. But yeah, 190 is way less than the previous M5. But at least it does look better than the previous M5. No, it doesn't look amazing, and it's certainly not as adventurous as the likes of Alfa Romeo or Jaguar, but at least it isn't ugly. It is a little bit bland, but I'd rather take bland than ugly, quite frankly. But yeah, it's still rear-wheel drive, and unfortunately only in Europe we could only have the 7-speed double-clutch gearbox, so flappy paddle. Couldn't get a manual 6-speed gearbox. That was only available in US and Canada, unfortunately. But yeah, it's still rear-wheel drive, and yeah, that means it's going to have plenty of oversteer fun. And yeah, it is nonetheless still a leading sports saloon car. So yeah, let's get out onto the open road and see what it can do. So yeah, like I was saying, this is ever so slightly slower in terms of acceleration than the previous M5. 0 to 16 4.114 seconds, and 0 to 109.516 seconds. So that's 0.014 seconds slower to 60 and 0.001 seconds slower to 100. Now obviously that is really rather minute in terms of time, and I'm pretty sure to the ordinary driver you really wouldn't notice that. But a new car is supposed to be, you know, better than the older car, and the fact that this isn't better in terms of acceleration or top speed is really rather disappointing, to be honest. And yeah, and it's not just disappointing in terms of you know, acceleration. The engine is nowhere near as exciting to listen to or as high revving as the V10 was. And in fact, even though this is a V8 like they have done before in a BMW M3, which was from 2008, that had a V8 as well, a smaller V8 nonetheless, but it still revved up to more than 8,000 RPM. So it's not like BMW don't have a history for making high revving, good sounding engines that are a V8, but because this has the turbochargers on top of it, it's yeah, really rather strangled in terms of engine note, and it pretty much sounds quite boring. And at low revs you can't hear it at all. It sounds more like a diesel in terms of how loud it is. So yeah, that is disappointing, but all that extra power and extra torque does mean that, you know, you can get the rear end out a lot easier because there's a lot more power going for those rear wheels. But the extra power does not help the car in any way in terms of acceleration or top speed, so it's pretty much pointless in all respects. And yeah, it just seems to me like BMW are trying to cover all areas without really excelling in any single one. Because obviously they've put the turbochargers on it to make it more economical, which is more economical than the previous M5. It's like 31% more economical, which is good and all, but this is supposed to be a sports car. Economy really isn't supposed to be the focus of this vehicle, and yet for whatever reason it is. And they can't really have the excuse of trying to stick to emissions regulations, because you know there were saloon cars around at this point that had large engines that didn't have turbochargers, and even ever since this car there have been, you know, sports saloons or sports coupes that have had large engines without turbochargers. So yeah, really don't buy the idea that it's for economy or emissions, because it's still only can do about 29 mpg, which isn't all that great. So yeah, a car built in such low numbers really shouldn't be concerning itself with economy, because no one's going to buy it and go, oh, it does 29 miles per gallon, therefore I'm going to buy this over everything else just because of that. No one's going to do that. They're going to buy it because it's fast or it's good handling or anything like that. And it is fast and it does handle really rather well, but it's not really at that much of an improvement over the previous car. The gearbox is apparently an improvement over the previous car, but being in a game can't really tell that. But the extra weight does, you know, not make it as good in terms of handling or in terms of braking, and the extra power is put to waste due to that extra weight. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag really, a lot more so than the previous M5, which the only problem I have with that was the looks. This does have better looks, but the engine isn't as good in terms of noise. It's slower in terms of acceleration, not by much, but still nonetheless slower. Has less of a top speed, and yeah, just isn't as fun to drive. So yeah, I do hope the latest M5 which is coming to this game, like I said in the Fortune Island expansion, is better than this. I'm not sure whether or not it is the all-wheel drive version that we're getting, because apparently it does come in an all-wheel drive version. Not sure if it only comes in all-wheel drive, I've not looked that up yet, but yeah, this is a general disappointment to be honest, and I do hope the newer version is at least somewhat of an improvement, because this is pretty much a step back from the previous M5 in most areas, to be honest. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.